Today, we're going to be diving into early mistakes that I made when I first got into the midterm rental game. These are battle scars from a journey that started back in 2015. When I had a budget of $15,000 to furnish a 3-bedroom, due to the tight budget, I bought stuff from IKEA. And guess what happens? You deal with frequent breakdowns. You deal with replacing those exact same things multiple different times. I didn't have the proper financial cushion. And I think that's a big lesson for me because after about 8 months of having that first property, the AC unit went out. And I literally scrapped every single penny I had to pick it up. People are going to move out early. People are going to damage some of the property. There might be something, might be messed up carpet, spilling wine on the floor or something like that. How are you going to get reimbursed? Is that specific in your lease terms? The biggest hurdle that I've ran into always comes from, where am I getting leads at? They're actually right in front of you 90% of the time, and you just have to search the other 10%. Welcome to the JV Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Vasquez. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JV Pod, which you're actually in for something special today because I'm going to be doing the JV Pod and Midterm Monday, which is actually something that I do on Facebook every single Monday. And today you guys are going to hear what that actually sounds like. And if you haven't actually been over to my free Facebook, I'm going to leave a link down there for you today. But I'm going to dive into exactly what we're going to be going through. And today we're going to be diving into early mistakes that I made when I first got into the midterm rental game. Trust me, these aren't just lessons. These are battle scars from a journey that started back in 2015. Way back then, I didn't have much. I wasn't rolling in cash. And I definitely was about making around $85,000 a year. And I had saved up probably $15,000 over time. And to top it off, I ended up selling my truck just to be able to scrape enough money together for a down payment on that property, which was actually for furniture and things like that. Sounds desperate, right? Well, it was. And today, that was only the beginning. That was only the beginning of this entire thing. And back then, midterm rentals weren't like, it was the wild, wild west. There wasn't no roadmaps. There was no gurus. There was no playbooks. It was just me, some big ideas, a lot of trial and error. And let me tell you, I made a lot of mistakes, from botched leases to furniture that completely started breaking apart. I mean, I can't even go into so much detail on that. And this is happening all in front of my face. It was not nice. It wasn't good. But here's the thing. Those mistakes also taught me the hard lessons that got me where I am today. So if you're starting out, even if you're a seasoned investor, and this is a reminder of what to do and what not to do. So this episode is exactly for you. I'll share the stories, the struggles, the strategies that came out through those tough early years. And my goal is to save you from the headache and help you avoid the mishaps that cost me a lot of time and a lot of money. And more than that, I had a ton of sleepless nights and I already can't sleep as it is. So grab a coffee, grab a beer, settle in. Let's talk about the mistakes that I made. So you don't have to. So you definitely don't want to miss this. So as I jump into this, I want to go back and reflect on my actual journey of starting off in the midterm rental space. And back in 2015, I think most of you already know the story about when I was connected to a travel nurse. Her name was Barbara. I worked in the hospital and I ended up seeing her. And she told me that she was staying in a crappy Motel 6, paying like $3,000 a month. And back in 2015, for those of you that heard this story, a lot of people heard it on Bigger Pockets, where I kind of laid it out for the first time. There really wasn't any property in my market at all. And the Central California market has always been a little hub spot for clinicians because there's just not enough. There's not enough of those jobs to meet the demand for the amount of patients that are here. And as I worked in healthcare for 18 years actually, I noticed that the Central Valley, because I worked in the Bay Area a lot, and a lot of the patients were sicker, they were younger. So this market just always had a ton of high acuity people that just had a lot of comorbidities, COPD, CHF, things of that nature. So when I met Barbara, I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything other than the idea and the process that was going to show me that this was an opportunity. And for me, once I found out she was paying $3,000 in 2015, you could buy a house for, $280,000, put down, 5%, 10%. I think I had to put down 5% or 10% on that property. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be right around there. I forget. I did end up getting a loan that I didn't have to put 20% down, which was pretty cool. And since then, loans have changed a lot. You definitely need to have 20% down if you're going to buy a investment property. Some banks I've seen do a 15%. You could do a second home loan type thing, but you have to make sure that you're covering your mortgage on your first one. So you got to make a pretty decent amount of money. So yeah, it was a lot of stuff that I had to do really quick. And when I found that opportunity, I realized that the travel nurses, there was just a ton of them that were coming in the market. And at that moment, I just knew I had to make a move on something. So, but the problem is that back in 2015, I had to sell my truck to get my foot in the door for the midterm rental game. But little did I know that was the beginning of the mistakes that I'd make, along with the lessons that would like actually set me up for success later. So let me kind of break down the context now. I was making about $85,000 a year at a company that I worked at. I think it was called Covenant Care at Home back then. And I was basically a sales rep, and I had saved over $15,000 because we would get these bonus checks, and I didn't touch any of the bonus checks. I just put them aside. I literally had a shoebox full of bonus checks that were like about to expire because I think they were about 6 months before you had to cash them. So I just saved all these bonus checks and ended up being, I don't know, right around $16,000. But the problem is that I worked for a company that gave us a car, right? They gave you a company car, and I had a truck. I bought a 2012 Toyota Tacoma. And for those of you that understand Toyota Tacomas, they're like one of the highest resale value vehicles literally out, even to this day, which is like 10 years later. They're one of the highest. Kelley Blue Book has them like as one of the top vehicles. Like you could literally buy a truck for $30,000 brand new, and in 5 years and 40,000 miles later, you could sell it for like basically $30,000. And that's what ended up happening is I ended up, I had to put down $15K, but I didn't realize that I'm gonna have to buy furniture. Like I actually have to buy furniture. I have to buy the things that the house needs. So I had enough money for the down payment, but I didn't have enough money to actually like get the things that I needed for the property. So I think the lesson here that I'm wanting to really, articulate in this conversation is that I didn't have the proper financial cushion or the understanding or wherewithal to know that I needed to figure out how to circulate money effectively. And through real estate, like that's essentially what you're doing. You're circulating money that when you put into it, and when you start to gain, when you get traction in your business, you start to get referrals and you start to get, people that are booking your property. It kind of starts to even out over the years, but I didn't understand how that actually worked in real estate. And I rushed in the deal because I realized that if I don't make moves quickly on things, I will move over stuff right away. And I knew that at that point, I had to make a decision to jump into this business right away. So that's when I just scrapped everything together and I jumped into it. I didn't have the stability that I probably should have had in buying the first property. And I think that's a big lesson for me because I ended up, putting myself in a really bad situation. Actually, after about 8 months of having that first property in 2015, which I bought for $320,000, my mortgage payment was right around $1,500 a month, and the AC unit went out, and I literally scrapped every single penny I had to pick it up. And then I had to get rid of my income that I actually made on that property over the 8 months that I was running it to pay for the AC unit that went out. So budgeting for long-term wasn't a thing for me at all. It should have been something I thought about. And I think this is important for everybody to understand is you need to make sure you have an emergency fund to fund your business as you're starting to jump off. And that's like at least 6 months of mortgage payments and things of that are put together. And again, I bootstrapped it. I'm glad I did. I wouldn't be here talking to you guys if I didn't, but I think it's really important to make sure that you're using tools to manage your finances better. This is again something that I didn't know about. I mean, wasn't really taught it, so I just kind of jumped into it. And now looking back, it was a super risky move that could have actually bankrupted me in multiple different ways. So I would really encourage you guys to make sure that you have, first off, get financial literacy because I had none of that, but also make sure that you're putting yourself in a position that you're going to win at the end of the day. The second thing that was a really big issue for me when I started off, and this is another lesson that I really want to make sure that you guys know, is that I had zero experience in leases. I didn't come from long-term rentals. Airbnb didn't use leases. We did get bookings from Airbnb and stuff like that, but we didn't use leases. And when you first start to jump into this business, you're going to have people that book your property for 2 months and they book a 3-month lease. They put together a 3-month lease, but they end up getting out of it early. And there's just small little things like that happen that I didn't realize would become an issue. And I was avoiding those situations altogether. I just didn't understand. I had a fear or a lack of knowledge of understanding leases the right way. I just thought it was, since I was working with companies and things like that, I didn't need to choose a lease that worked best. I did talk to an attorney, but the attorney wasn't sharp in midterm rentals. There was nobody that was actually educated in the space at all. So it was really hard to kind of put those pieces together. But for me, I realized early on, and now 9 years later, I use Turbo Tenant now for leases. Everything's in there. Everything's lined up in there. What you need to do, the background checks, which is also another thing that I didn't have. I didn't understand background checks. I didn't know what was a good credit score, what was a bad credit score, what's something I would be willing to take versus something I wasn't willing to take. And it was always kind of on the whim. I never had any really standard operating procedures at all. And I think, again, that's an important piece of the puzzle because you have to understand how to protect yourself. And that's exactly what a lease does. It protects you from potentially, having people that stay in your property that aren't going to leave, which I get messages on a regular basis. These things happen to a lot of people all the time. And it's a crappy situation. So I think not understanding how to protect yourself and your property is a huge mistake that I obviously did. And I know I've learned over the years of what to do and how to make sure to put things together. And I just recommended Turbo Tenant. I really, really like them a lot. I think there's a lot of potential, when you're using their products. Custom leases for the midterm rental space, they matter because, again, just like I mentioned a minute ago, people are going to move out early. People are going to, damage some of the property. There might be something that might be messed up, carpet, spilling, wine on the floor or something like that. How are you going to get reimbursed? Is that specific in your lease terms? So I think, again, it's really, really important to make sure that you're putting leases that are specific to, the clients that you're getting. So I really make sure to do that. One of the other ones, I think this is a critical tip when it comes to clauses in the midterm rental space. I usually only refer to my tenants as guests. We don't actually put tenant in there. We put guests because that vernacular is important. They're on assignment. They're working on, whatever market, let's say Texas market right now or Houston where I have property. They're going to be there for 3 months. They're actually guests while they're on assignment in the property. So using those terms were big. And basically, again, you guys need to talk to your attorney about this, but essentially what the attorney said is that we want to make sure that we frame these folks that they're not actually staying as tenants in the property, but they're rather just doing an assignment, staying as a guest until they eventually leave. Their assignment is up and it's due. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're putting these leases together in a way that actually say that. And again, talk to your attorney. I'm obviously not an attorney, but you definitely want to make sure to do that because, again, that right there alone cost me, I can't even tell you how many thousands of dollars over the years because of just neglecting small things like that. And I purposefully didn't do that on purpose, which I said purposefully, and I don't know if that was even the right context for it. So I just didn't know. And now I know better. And that's why I'm encouraging you guys to make sure that you don't do that because that cost me literally thousands of dollars. The other big mistake that I made, and this is a really common mistake too, is that when I had a budget of $15,000 to furnish a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, so 1,500, 1,600 square feet, I didn't really have that much money. In fact, I think I only had like 12,000. That's how much I got for selling my truck. I sold my truck for like 28 grand. And I think I already paid 12,000 into it. So I ended up with a leftover amount of $12,000 that I had to furnish the place. So I ended up going to where everybody goes and furnishing in the least expensive way with low quality furniture due to the tight budget. And I bought stuff from IKEA. I bought couches. I bought like nightstands. I bought all the crap that everybody buys there when they first start their midterm rentals. And guess what happens? You deal with frequent breakdowns. You deal with replacing those exact same things multiple different times if you continue to go to the same outlet like IKEA, which is what I did. And the biggest mistake that I make there, and I see a lot of people do this, is they're not prioritizing durability and guest experience. Like if you have a nightstand that's flimsy, if you touch it and it moves all over the place, which is what happened with my IKEA furniture, it was just not steady in a way that it was just prone to break. If you've ever looked at any IKEA stuff, they use these little tiny Allen wrench bolts and they're like not that big. They're not very strong. The wood is like cardboard a lot of the times. It's not put together right. It's just not stuff that you want to have with longevity. And I ended up replacing that same stuff with the same stuff again. And I didn't prioritize durability in the guest experience. And that was a big problem for me because over the years, those long-term costs I thought were short-term savings. And in reality, those costs actually ended up being way more money throughout the years because, I bought a $85 nightstand and then I went and bought another $85 nightstand. And then after that, I ended up buying like a $300 nightstand. So if I would have just bought that the first time, I wouldn't be in a position to continue to buy these same exact things. So I would really encourage everybody to invest in durability, mid-range furniture at best that withstands wear and tear. I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. And, brands that I really like, I think there's a lot of really quality stuff when it comes to, I think IKEA still has good stuff. If you're gonna buy essentials, so like cups, silverware, things of that nature, I think are really good from IKEA and they're cheap, right? But I would really encourage everybody to go to World Market. In fact, that's where I get a lot of stuff now. We get a lot of stuff from World Market. If you guys go to a company called Minoan or Host GPO, they have a ton of stuff from like Crate and Barrel and places like that. That are more of like the higher end type of, even stuff from World Market, you can get it for a discounted rate through those platforms. So I think it's really encouraging to go on Minoan.com or go to, what's the other one? Host GPO and find furniture that is actually, if you're going to do it yourself, find furniture that's quality, but also maybe you can get it at a discount. And those brands I really, really like a lot. I think they're quality. There's also another brand that I really like. It's called Article. In fact, the couch that you guys see in the back here is from Article. And a lot of the stuff that I buy is Article because it's just quality. It's a lot of it's made in the US and it's just strong. So again, I actually like it for my personal house. I think, again, it's really just important to think about, being able to buy quality furniture the first time, even if you're on a budget, like maybe skimp out on art and other stuff that you could buy later on, but make sure that get those really, really quality pieces like, couches and beds and things of that nature. Get the nice stuff, get the mid-range stuff. So invest in durability. I mentioned the brands that I really like. Use those. I think they're really, really important. Hey everyone, if you are feeling stuck or not like you're making the progress you want in your midterm rental journey, I've got something that can change everything for you. Imagine being part of a community that's not only supportive, but filled with like-minded individuals who are driven to succeed, just like you. Whether you are just starting out, looking to take care of your business to another level, my community is designed to help you break through those barriers. We're currently opening up registration for new enrollees, so if you're serious about building a thriving midterm rental business, and you want to leverage my 10,000 hours of experience, this is your chance. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others in the same path. I hope to see you guys. The link is in the show notes, and let's build something incredible together. Let's get back to this episode. The other big issue that I had when I first started, and this is one that you guys are probably all doing, is that I missed the boat on a lot of lead generation through Airbnb. I think Airbnb is one of the greatest places to get leads and get bookings. But the thing is if you're not leveraging leads like insurance companies, and actually what happened to me, and this is how I even came to this conclusion, I should have probably brought this up first, is that in 2016, I ended up getting a 6-month booking from an insurance relocation company. And they ended up booking my property for 6 months on Airbnb, and it was like $6,900. And to get a place booked for $6,900 when your mortgage is $1,500, like that's an immense amount of cash flow. And I was just like, holy crap, this is amazing. I got this booking from Airbnb. The first message that came through was like, hey, Jesse, I'm so-and-so. I work for ALE Solutions. I have a client that lost their home in the same market. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about where your property's at? And, I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird. They said they were going to book it for a certain amount of time. I thought it was like a too good to be true kind of scenario, but they ended up booking the place. I ended up meeting the family. But here's where I really screwed up, is that I was already building relationships, like I mentioned with Donna and Doctors Hospital and all those companies that I worked with beforehand. But for some reason, my brain didn't register the relocation specialist and building corporate clients through Airbnb. So they're going to give you the information of what they're actually doing. And I think that was one of my biggest things, is that not only was there somebody that booked my property from a relocation company, there was construction companies that were coming. I remember we had a solar company that stayed for a while at the property. We had beekeepers that came, and I actually ended up pulling them off the platform, but years later. So there's just all these bookings that come through Airbnb, but you have to make sure they're actually starting to build relationships and you're thinking about it like a business or like a corporate entity, so that you can actually build those relationships with those people, because they don't just happen overnight. Like it takes a lot of time. And for me, I was losing out on the ability to see things long term, and to see the high value opportunities. I didn't see that at that time, which is weird because I was doing things the exact opposite. And I have a lot of people that reach out to me and say, I only get bookings from Airbnb. And I ask, like, who are you connecting with on there? And they'll tell me their leads that they get. And a lot of it's the exact same thing that I'm dealing with. They're just not asking the questions. So I think the lesson here is to make sure that you're diversifying your lead generation strategy that's beyond just Airbnb, right? We want to make sure that we're going beyond Airbnb, but also Airbnb is a great space to be able to get these bookings. But you got to make sure you're asking. And I think the other thing too is to use every lead as an opportunity to build connections, whether that comes from Airbnb or VRBO or Furnish Finder or a direct inquiry. Like you have to make sure that you're thinking about, how can I actually create this relationship with this company? Or how do I even approach these companies if they're talking to me? I think that's the other thing too. And it's really important to start to know what you're doing, understand what you're doing, and you have to provide value to them, because at the end of the day, you're just a resource for them. You're just somebody that has a property that they need. But if you start to flip the script and you're like, what do these companies actually truly need from me? Am I able to deliver value to them before they even ask for it? Am I able to secure multiple different properties that I might only own one, but I have 5 people or 5 friends that are in my market? I now have 5 different opportunities for them to be able to bring to them. So I think, again, it's really important to put yourself in a position where you are able to get those leads through Airbnb, and then start to think about other platforms where you're getting leads already, and you have to look at those leads as an opportunity to build connections. And again, that's so important for me. And those are the three biggest lessons, because I can't tell you guys how many opportunities that I actually missed out on through Verbo and through Airbnb. I mean, I just told you, like, a year. It literally took a year for me from the first insurance relocation claim in 2016 to come to 2017 and be like, oh crap, like this is an opportunity. And I missed it because I got another claim that came through Airbnb. And it's pretty cool when you get claims like that on Airbnb, because I mean, you don't really have to do much and you get paid this exorbitant amount of money, right? A lot of the times. But again, if I was very intentional, like I was on the opposite end, on the B2B strategy, this would have been a totally different context. So I really want to make sure that you guys understand the takeaways here. Those are the three lessons that really stuck out to me, and how I feel like I could have changed my business model, how I could have changed my approach. And it was just, hopefully you guys are listening to this and you have the ability, like the thoughts and the understanding to be like, okay, like these are actually leads that I can actually do something with. Because again, I just didn't have that. And I don't know why, because I was doing it already, but just not in that context, not through, Airbnb. It was through seeing that nurse, Barbara, connecting to the, HR department down in the hospital, then connecting to AMN Healthcare, which is the company for the travel nurses. And it ended up going that route. So I just wasn't thinking deep enough. And I feel like, again, that was just such a big error in my sense. There's probably a lot more money that I could have made a lot quicker and built a lot more relationships a lot faster. So build financial stability. That's going to be super important if you guys are jumping into the midterm rental game or real estate just in general. Again, I didn't do this. I was like, literally all the money that I had, I put into it. And I'm glad I did. But if there was any situation or any problems that happened, I would have been in a really bad situation. Like I mentioned earlier, I had to pay for an AC unit that was like 10 grand. I didn't have that money. I did have it in the account that was specific to that building. But if I was living off that money, there would have been nothing there. I had to pick up a credit card or do something like that, which I think is also another smart move, a low interest credit card, but that's for another day. Using professional leases to protect your business and your property, like that is another one that I screwed up on. And I hope to God you guys aren't doing those mistakes. I think that was a big mistake that I learned really early on. And I continued to make because I just didn't put enough time and energy into learning the leases. And, nowadays we have Turbo Tenant and all kinds of other companies that have these lease terms put together. They even have bank accounts that you can connect in there and that are specific to your property. So there's just a lot of, really cool software out now that allows you to do everything in one spot, which I think is really, really important. And then prioritizing quality furnishings to save long-term headaches. I'm telling you guys, that was a big problem for me early on. I spent a lot of unnecessary money on that. So I encourage you guys to think ahead, to skimp on stuff that you might not necessarily need. And again, if it's like art or something like that, you got to figure stuff out. Maybe go to a secondhand store, maybe go on Facebook Marketplace, which I did too. And I picked up some really quality pieces that weren't worn too bad. And I also refurbished some of them. So I think that's a really smart thing to do. If you guys are starting off, look through that Facebook Marketplace, make sure that you find quality furnishings, because again, it will save you over the long haul. And then valuable leads. This is the one I just talked about a minute ago. Those valuable leads, you have to nurture every single opportunity that comes through. And I think, again, that's where the biggest hurdle that I've ran into always comes from, that specific place where I'm like, where am I getting leads at? They're actually right in front of you 90% of the time. And you just have to, search the other 10%. And when I say this to people, they look at me like I'm crazy, but go back and look at all the leads you might have got on Airbnb over the last several years if you've been operating, and you'll see that there's leads that have come through that you didn't necessarily nurture. And I think that's where the opportunity is in that lack of nurturing those relationships that you get. Because a lot of us will just get that money handed to us, put on a silver platter. We get it, and then we just forget about the client that's there. Or at least I did for the first couple of years, which again was opposite of what I was doing. But again, this is what I want you guys to do, is to reflect on your own personal mistakes that you've been making and how you can avoid them, because this is the whole goal behind me doing these podcasts and these videos and stuff like that, is to get you in a position that's going to allow you to win. So I think if you're feeling stuck or unsure how to start, you're definitely going to want to make sure to join. I have an upcoming webinar that's going to be out. I believe we're going to be shooting for the second week of December, which is going to be probably December 17th or 18th. And in this webinar, I'm going to talk about all the things that are happening in 2025, a lot of shifts that are happening in, the market and what's actually coming forward in the future. So I'd really, really encourage you guys to listen to that webinar, sign up and register for it. And you'll see some information coming through here in the next probably week or so about that. That's going to be coming through. But yeah, if you've ever been in a situation where you didn't know what you were doing and had to figure it out on the fly, that's what entrepreneurship is. So don't feel bad about that. I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. And I think it's part of how you do business. And I think a lot of times we think we need to have it all together, but in reality, we don't. And that's truly how it is. But if you're interested in also joining my mentorship, which I'm opening enrollment right now, actually today's Cyber Monday, and we're having the last sale when it comes to, me putting out my mentorship for a really cheap price, and we're discounting it by like $1,400. So if you guys want to join that, I would encourage you to do so. There's a ton of people that are building successful midterm rental businesses. And the cool thing is they're working with me. They're creating their Rolodex, they're creating their opportunities. And there's a framework that I've created. It's called CRIM, and it's community, resources, education, and mentorship. Those 4 pillars right there are what I see people who are the most successful. They have all 4 of those. And a lot of them are in the mentorship. There's obviously people that are outside the mentorship that have done this as well. But I'm telling you guys that there's a lot of opportunity when you start to really dive your nose in and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay focused on this. In 2025, I'm going to build X, Y, Z. I'm going to pick up 1 or 2 properties or 3 or co-host 10. Like, we're actually able in a position to get you there. You just have to be willing to do the work and obviously be able to financially be ready for that. And also, you have to want to change the way that your trajectory is. If you're not doing well with your properties and you want to build something successful, sometimes you got to put yourself in a position where it costs money and you got to build to put in something. And I do that on a regular basis. In fact, that's one of my goals for 2025 is to continue to invest in mentorships, continue to invest in my growth and self-development, which I think is really important. And it's just one of the things that I found as a foundation of, not only being able to make more income, but I think personal development is just such a strong category that will allow you to make more money, to be able to connect with more people. It's just one of those positions that if you're able to start absorbing that, put yourself on that path, over the years, you'll just generally start to make more money and build more friendships and have quality relationships that last over time. And at least that's what it was for me. A lot of the people that I see out there, not only my mentorship, but in other mentorships that I even joined. Again, I think it's so important. So if you guys are willing to do that, you're ready to do that, comment down below. I'd love to see you guys in our inner circle. And we're doing some really cool things in the community, and I hope you're a part of it. But yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. Hopefully you got some value from this. Leave a comment, leave a like. Let me know what you guys think about this episode or this. I'm going to do both. This is going to be on YouTube, and it's also going to be on Facebook Live, and it's probably going to be a podcast. So we'll check it out. But anyways, appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the JV Podcast. I'm Jesse Vasquez, your host. I appreciate you for listening. And if you could do me a huge solid, go like and subscribe to this. This helps us tremendously. And as always, thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.